Greetings, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another edition of Ranking the Albums. Today we're going to kind of continue along with some more jazz fusion classics. A classic band, another one of my favorites, along with yesterday's Return to Forever. I would say my top two favorite jazz fusion bands of all time are Return to Forever and the Mahavishnu Orchestra, who we are going to look at today. All right, not a huge discography. These guys, had like kind of like their glory period, then some years of inactivity, and then kind of John McLaughlin resurrected the band again for a couple of years, and then poof, that's it. But what a catalog! What a catalog! So as always, on these shows, I'm going to go from my least favorite up to my favorite. I actually own all of them except for one. One is kind of has always been kind of hard to find, and I just never really went out to get it, but I just was able to secure a copy of it, so I'm going to be adding that to my collection now that I've doing this show, and I realized that, you know what, you never went and found this one, Pete, so it's going to happen. So anyway, like I said, there are 8 studio albums. I'm actually going to talk quite a bit about a live album too, which is going to be kind of included in here, though not in the ranking, otherwise it'd be 9. So it's going to be 8, but I am going to kind of talk about that live album. We'll get to that. Anyway, starting at number 8, we're going to go to 1984's Mahavishnu. All right, so this is one of the latter incarnations of the band. And, it's obviously the 80s, so things are a little bit different in Mahavishnu world. And McLaughlin just trying to kind of change with the time. So here you've got, he's on Les Paul electric guitar, he's on synclavier and a digital guitar. So, of course, synthesized guitar sounds and all that sort of thing really popular right around this time. So, obviously, the tone of the song is going to be a little bit different. You got Mitchell Foreman on Fender Rhodes and various other keyboards. You got Jonas Hellborg on fretless bass guitar, fantastic bass player. All right, he actually was with McLaughlin for a few years. You got Bill Evans on sax, the great Bill Evans, and Billy Cobham from the original Mahavishnu lineup, back on drums. You got Danny Gottlieb helping out a little bit on percussion. He would later join the band full time, and various other people kind of helping out here and there. It's not a bad album by any means. Like I said, I don't dislike any of these albums at all. It's just, it's real Mahavishnu light. It's kind of like, early mid-80s light jazz fusion. Not a lot of rock going on here. A lot of that kind of, the digital guitar and the synclavier sounds kind of dominating the mix. I don't know. The sax is nice. I mean, Evans is a great, great player. And, of course, you got Cobham on drums. So I think this is a fun album. It's just, you can't really stack it up against those early classics. You just can't. But, for 1984, it is what it is. I hate saying that term, but it's just not bad. It's not bad. It's probably my least favorite of all of them, but, I dig it. Number 7, the one I don't have, Adventures in Radioland from 1987. So another kind of in the similar style to that one. I actually like Adventures in Radioland a little bit better. I think McLaughlin unleashes a little more kind of actual guitar work on here, which is pretty good. Here you got Danny Gottlieb, like I mentioned, taking over the drums from Billy Cobham. Okay, you got Jonas Hellborg again on bass. You got Bill Evans and Mitchell Foreman also reprising their roles in the band. Decent album. Little more guitar explorations from John. Okay, the Weight is a good tune. You got Just Ideas, The Wall Will Fall. Some decent songs. Florianopolis. Those two albums are easily the weakest of the Mahavishnu catalog, but they both have plenty of stuff to recommend. Obviously. All right. So next up on my list is 1976's Inner Worlds. So, here, again, another transition album. You've got a lot of different shifting of personnel over a period of a couple of albums. And this album, for me, half of it really works. And the other half is like, kind of the issue I had on yesterday's show about the Return to Forever. It's like, they felt the need to incorporate vocals, female vocals in that instance, on a couple of their albums. Sometimes with music like this, you don't need vocals, right? A lot of jazz fusion and jazz stuff, it's like, it's good. It's instrumental music. But, I get it. It's, the latter part of the 70s, looking to get a little bit more mainstream attention. Here you've got John McLaughlin on guitar synths. You've got Stu Goldberg on keyboards, Ralph Armstrong on bass, and you've got the fine Narada Michael Walden on drums and also vocals. And he has been, at this point, he's been with the band for a couple of years because he's on the previous 2 albums. Terrific player. You know, looking for a guy to replace Billy Cobham surely was not easy, but Mr. Walden perfectly fit the bill. Any other players on this album? I think that's the bulk of it. Let me just double check here. Yeah. My issue with this album, like I said, half of it is really good. Very kind of funkified, fiery jazz fusion, you know, similar to the first couple of albums. You got All in the Family and Miles Out, both terrific. Some slashing guitar work from McLaughlin, you know, great rhythms and keyboards, and Walden's fantastic drumming. But then all of a sudden, you know, you got some tunes, you know, like In My Life and Gita, and, you know, which have like vocals, and they're kind of like these sort of funky pop tunes. I don't know, you know, it's like they're okay, but I just think that, do we really need the vocals, you know, here? And I get what they were doing. The Way of the Pilgrim is a fine tune. I like Lotus Feet and the title track Inner Worlds, fantastic stuff. But, you know, for me, this album, half of it is incredible, and the other half, I'm just kind of like, man, wish they would have changed it up a little bit, but still a good album. Like I said, don't get me wrong and thinking that, you know, don't think that I don't like these albums. I do. I don't know. Like I said, I like my jazz fusion instrumental without vocals. That's just me. It's always been me. All right, next up, we're going to go to number 5 from 1974. We're going to go to Apocalypse. And I know there's going to be folks that are going to rank this a little bit higher. This is actually, you know, everything going forward, I really have no fault with at all. No issue with. I love them. I just think that, you know, this album is it's this grand spectacle, you know, with the London Symphony Orchestra. It's very orchestral, a lot of classical stuff going on here, mixing with the jazz and the jazz fusion and the rock. And it's a big, huge sounding album with lots of epic tracks. We got John McLaughlin, of course, on guitars. We've got Jean-Luc Ponty on violin, Ralph Armstrong on bass, Narada Michael Walden again on drums. On keyboards and vocals, you've got Gail Moran. Gail Moran, we talked about yesterday, also appeared on Return to Forever album, wife of Chick Corea. As well as, like I said, you got the Michael Tilson Thomas, the conductor of the orchestra, and you got all sorts of violins, cellos, things like that, orchestral elements to the album. Some fantastic stuff on here. You know, this is when I'm in the mood to listen to like big and grandiose Mahavishnu Orchestra. This is the album you reach for, because it totally is. All right, you got Hymn to Him, which is like nearly 20 minutes long. You know, fantastic. Power of Love, Vision is a Naked Sword. You got some of the somewhat shorter tracks, you know, Smile of the Beyond and Wings of Karma, all very kind of spiritual sounding, big, bombastic, just grandiose stuff. And, you know, I dig it. It's a really good album. It's definitely their most challenging album, you know, as far as like, you know, big production. Yeah, they've got music that's a little more complex, but I think that this is just kind of their, you know, grand opus, so to speak. You know, and it's a good one. It's a good one. But, you know, and again, we're looking at the Mahavishnu Orchestra in terms of kind of like quick little 2-year eras. And the other album from the same era, basically the same lineup of the band, is Visions of the Emerald Beyond. And I tend to reach for this album a little bit more than Apocalypse, because I think this album, again, you've got kind of shorter tracks. It's not as kind of grandiose, although just the similar feel to the album. Okay. And you got basically the exact same lineup. So you got Moran, Walden, Armstrong, Ponty, and McLaughlin, with various other folks jumping in on cello, violin, so on and so forth. But here, you know, it kicks off with the amazing Eternity's Breath Part 1 and 2, which, and you know what, on this album, I don't mind a little bit of vocals too much, because they're really kind of in the background, but the music is like so strong and powerful. Eternity's Breath is very, very cool. It's kind of like, it's got rock elements, jazz, the classical thing going on. You got Lila's Dance, Can't Stand Your Funk, Pastoral, Faith, all right? And then on side 2, you got all sorts of cool stuff. You got Cosmic Strut, Earthship, Pegasus, Opus 1. On the Way Home to Earth. There's also kind of like a futuristic slant to some of these songs, which is pretty terrific. I always dug this album a lot. Like I said, I like Apocalypse a lot too, but I've always reached for this. To me, there's more guitar on this album. And, when you come to a Mahavishnu Orchestra album, you want to hear McLaughlin a lot. And he's on this one quite a bit. Not that he's not on Apocalypse, he is, of course, but I think there the kind of orchestrations take precedent, where here McLaughlin's riffs and solos are ever present. So that's my number 4. Coming in at number 3, we're going to go to an album that was officially released in 1999. However, it was recorded in 1973. And up until 99, we had never heard any of these, on a Mahavishnu album, we'd never heard any of these tracks except on their live album from that same year, which is Between Nothingness and Eternity. So when this was released, of course, the band played this notable concert in New York Central Park, that summer. And they played a full set of old classics and some new stuff. What they did was they released a single LP live album of just the new stuff, which is pretty terrific. You can only imagine, like, if you were in the audience that night, again, we know how audiences are. It's like you like to hear stuff that you know, and just imagine, like, hearing, like, these lengthy tracks, and each one, we got 21 minutes long, 12 and 8. So this is, half hour plus of stuff that never heard before. Big, loud, challenging stuff. So these are the new tunes that they were working on for an eventual album, which never at the time got released. And then the band, that lineup completely broke up. So here you've got the original group of McLaughlin, Billy Connor, Jan Hammer, Rick Laird, and Jerry Goodman on violin. Okay, Rick Laird on bass, Jan Hammer on keyboards, Cobham and McLaughlin. So you've got the trilogy, 3-part trilogy, 12 minutes in length. You got Sister Andrea and Dream, which is over 21 minutes long. There is some savage playing on this album. There are times where my favorite Mahavishnu is their live album. And the performance is just unbelievable. It's so aggressive and heavy for kind of like a jazz combo, right? So the album that they were actually working on, which is going to be my number 3 release here, which eventually was released as the Lost Trident Sessions in 1999. Again, these were the last studio recordings of that lineup. All right, so here you've got those tracks that made it onto here. You've got Dream, you've got Trilogy, Sister Andrea, and also I Wonder, Stepping Tones, and John's Song. I mean, this is a great album. And if you love that original lineup, what's not to love about this? It's just a continuation of the Birds of Fire album. And it's kind of, as much as I love, Visions and Apocalypse, it's almost painful to think about, well, what would have happened if the original group had continued on for a couple more albums? It's pretty mind-blowing to think about it, because these first 3 recordings are of just ridiculous quality, not only the songwriting but the musicianship, and there was just nobody like them. Fast speed of light guitar work and heavy riffs, and Cobham's unbelievable drum work, full of groove but so much technique. You got Jerry Goodman's wispy violin, Jerry Goodman coming in from the Flock. You got Jan Hammer's incredible electric piano work. Okay, not only a great composer, but man, could he solo fleetly. And then, Rick Laird holding it all together with his just rock solid bass playing. Just a terrific, one of the great lineups of all time. That's another idea for a show. Like the great lineups. A lot of bands had lots of lineups, but there's a certain amount that had and a lineup that was just so impressive on every level. Might consider doing that. But anyway, the original lineup of the Mahavishnu Orchestra definitely was that. So Lost Trident Sessions, number 3. Coming in at number 2, my number 1 and 2, man, have been flip-flopping back and forth for as long as I've been listening to this band. So I can recall the first time I ever checked out the Mahavishnu Orchestra was in the early 80s. It was 84, 85, something like that. It's almost the middle of the decade, because again, I was a hard rock and metal guy. I wasn't really didn't listen to any jazz ever. And then I had a neighbor who was actually a Deadhead, who was into a lot of this kind of stuff. And one day we were sitting around, we had no classes, and we were sitting around in his apartment, discussing and listening to music and, enjoying some other things. And he popped in Mahavishnu Orchestra the first album. And I was like, what in the world is this? And he's like, that's John McLaughlin and the Mahavishnu Orchestra. You like that? I figured you like this. You're into guitar music. And I'm like, holy cow. And I was forever, that was it. So, it's going back way back then, their first two albums have been flip-flopping, as far as which is my favorite. And, like a year or two ago, I was saying one thing, and now, as been leading up to doing the show here this week, I kind of flip-flopped it back to what my original observation was of these first two albums. So I'm going to kind of stick with that. And coming in at number 2 from 1973, their second album, Birds of Fire. And there's kind of I think there's a reason why. I think that this is a fantastic album with some fantastic songs on it. The title track, Birds of Fire, is just absolutely savage. I think that a lot of the tunes on here, I almost wish some of them were a little longer. All right, this is a more compact album from the debut, but, Miles Beyond, terrific. Tribute to Miles Davis, right? Celestial Terrestrial Commuters, Sapphire Bullets of Pure Love. You got Thousand Island Pork. Thousand Island Park, killer. The Wonderful Hope, One Word, which is the lengthy song on here. It's nearly 10 minutes long. Fantastic, adventurous, mysterious. Okay, you got Sanctuary, another killer track. Open Country Joys, more of kind of like a jazzy, folky jig, so to speak. And then to finish it all off, Resolution. McLaughlin's tone on here is absolutely savage. You got some great keyboard work from Jan Hammer. The whole band is just firing on all cylinders. And again, it's just sad when you go back and think that there's just not that much from that original lineup. So my favorite, as you can assume here, from 1971, Intermounting Flame. Matching up with the shirt. Sometimes the first album you ever heard by a band is the one that kind of stays with you. And like I said, for the most part, that's been the case. Although, I love the Birds of Fire album big time. I wanted to see if I wanted to show that. There's the guys in the band right there. McLaughlin was playing that double neck Gibson guitar quite a bit back in those days. Anyway, back to Intermounting Flame. I digress. Classic album. The original lineup, obviously. You got the amazing Meeting of the Spirits, which, that's the first song I ever heard. And still to this day, I listen to that song and I'm like, holy moly. It's just nothing like it. It's got this kind of like dreamy, hypnotic opening, and then the violin and the guitars come slashing in, and you got this ridiculous kind of fuzzed, distorted guitar solo from McLaughlin that just like explodes from the speakers. You got Cobham just rumbling, and I gotta say, Billy Cobham on the live album, oh my god, unbelievable. There's a reason why he's one of my favorite drummers of all time. Guy's insane. You got Dawn, you got the Noonwood Race. Cool, kind of funky rhythms, heavy driving song. A Lotus on Irish Streams. There's also some really gorgeous kind of pastoral stuff on this album. Okay, you got Vital Transformation, more kind of heavy, funky jazz fusion. The Dance of Maya, another ridiculous song. You Know, and Awakening to finish it all off. Just incredible, incredible music by an incredible band. Again, I can't say enough about Return to Forever and Mahavishnu Orchestra, the two bands on the fusion scene. I like a lot of bands. I mean, I love Weather Report and Tony Williams' Lifetime and Brand X and, Larry Coryell's Seventh House and, of course, the Miles Davis stuff. And by the way, if you haven't seen Mike Antonelli and mine and myself do the highlights of the Miles Davis catalog, decade by decade, go into the playlist and search for that. If you love this kind of stuff, we talk about all the great Miles Davis albums or our favorites from each era. Okay, so you definitely don't want to miss that. But back to Mahavishnu. Let's recap my list here. So we've got number 1, Intermounting Flame from 1971. Number 2, Birds of Fire from 73. Number 3, The Lost Trident Sessions from 1973/99 in conjunction with Between Nothingness and Eternity, the live album. Number 4, Visions of the Emerald Beyond from 75. Number 5, Apocalypse from 74. Number 6, Inner Worlds from 76. Number 7, Adventures in Radioland from 87. And number 9, Mahavishnu from 1984. There you have it. If you haven't checked these out, I urge you to. After we did the Return to Forever show yesterday, got all sorts of people saying, Pete, thanks for this. I just always heard of this band, but never went out and discovered them. And I went and listened to a couple of their albums you recommended. And wow, great stuff. That's the purpose of the show like this. All right. So for people to discover new music that you never heard before by either older bands or newer bands, and for those of you who maybe love this stuff but haven't listened to it in a while, maybe it gives you a chance to go and revisit it again, right? So this is on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, of course, we're here on YouTube all the damn time. See you guys later tonight. Special show. Stephen Reed's coming on the show. We're going to rank the studio catalog of Magnum. Long-time UK melodic hard rockers / prog rockers. They kind of do a little bit of everything. A great band that a lot of you have asked for. So Stephen is a long-time writer for Sea of Tranquility. He's going to come on the show for the first of many appearances going forward, and we're happy to have him, and that'll be coming up later tonight. So take care, guys. We'll see you then. Bye-bye.